Call this meeting to order. Adoption of agenda. I got mover Councillor Neal, seconder Councillor Kenny. Are there any changes? Seeing none, adoption of minutes. I have mover Councillor DeRose, seconder Councillor Hanley from council meeting minutes of May 5th, 2020. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mayor's report. The following media release was released on May 15th regarding restrictions eased on outdoor spaces and amenities, and because of its importance, I'm going to read that release. It was a release from our CAO, Manoj Dalwaria. As Niagara cautiously eyes the road forward to recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, some restrictions are being lifted, allowing residents greater use and access to some outdoor spaces. Specifically, residents will be able to use parks and outdoor sports fields for more than walk-through uses, but with some limitations. Residents must still abide by restrictions limiting groups no more than 5 people and maintaining 2-meter physical separation. Passive activities will now be permitted in these areas, including bringing a chair or blanket to relax in the park, kicking a ball, playing catch, flying a kite, or other activities with members of your own household. Individual activities such as exercising, provided they are not in a group or class. In addition to easing certain restrictions, some previously closed amenities will reopen in the near future, such as our tennis courts in Confederation Park. We ask the public to remain patient as staff prepare these facilities for operation over the coming days. Anyone taking advantage of these spaces should be sure to follow best practices to limit the spread of COVID-19 as outlined by Niagara Region Public Health. These include frequent washing, sanitization of hands, physical separation, avoid touching of shared surfaces, and staying home if displaying symptoms or having been in contact with cases of the virus. Organized sports are still restricted in municipal field, given their necessity for gathering of groups. At this time, park and outdoor amenities such as playground equipment, benches, and washrooms remain closed to limit the spread of COVID-19 on shared services. The move to limit restrictions comes as Niagara adjusts to response to COVID-19 in line with yesterday's announcement from the province of Ontario. Regional and municipal governments continue ongoing work to map Niagara's path forward as the province prepares to enter its first phase of recovery today, Tuesday, May 19th, lifting the closures of several non-essential businesses categories like retail operations and all construction projects. Bylaw enforcement will continue to enforce gatherings larger than 5 people and anyone using closed park amenities. And that media release can be found on our website and Facebook page. As Niagara plans its recovery from COVID-19, Niagara's Economic Rapid Response Team is reaching out to businesses affected by the pandemic to help inform that recovery through a brief online survey. This is a follow-up second survey. The first one was completed in late March. This initiative involves all 12 municipalities in the region. The deadline of this survey is 5 p.m. on Monday, May 25th. I have reached out to the Thorold BIA as well as the Niagara Board of Trade and Commerce and asked them to please inform their membership of the survey opportunity. For further information, please visit the following website link: errt.niagararegion.ca. That's errt.niagararegion.ca. Another initiative that the region is doing through economic development is Open in Niagara, which will be a page on the website that connects Niagara businesses with customers. So any business in Niagara of any business category can go online and register with their information and services they offer, whether it's curbside delivery or in-store service, And this is free, and it's on the regional website. And it's called openinniagara.ca. And that media release will be on our website as well as our Facebook page, as well as it's on the Region Economic Development website. As mentioned in the last mayor's report, most of my time has been spent working with local businesses to address any issues or concerns they have in conjunction with upper levels of government and the Niagara Economic Rapid Response Team. By working together, we are seeing results and providing input on program positives and shortfalls to our federal and provincial representatives. The interest from the business community remains strong in the city of Thorold, and we hope to have some positive announcements near future. The Thorold tunnel shift to the South Tube was completed 2 days earlier than expected and allowed for traffic flow in both directions over the long weekend. Beaver Dams Road will be closed in blocks over the next 3 days to allow for its repaving from Collier Road to the Highway 406 overpass. Of note, the Front Street project is well underway. Our community spirit continues to shine with many examples of supporting those in need during these unprecedented times. And another example, food giveaway number 5, was a great success. Thank you once again to the anonymous Thorold donor, Councillors Hanley, Sentence, and DeRose, who also volunteered, all the others who volunteered, and city staff. As we move into phase 1 of the reopening plan, let's stay the course and continue to follow important messaging regarding social distancing, hand washing, cleaning and disinfecting high-touch surfaces, etc. It is not time to ease off and think it is business as usual. If we all work together, we'll get through this quicker and emerge stronger than ever. And that's the end of my mayor's report. We'll move into motions for council support. Motion A, City of Thorold. I got a mover, Councillor Neal, and a second, Councillor Decker. I'll refer that to Councillor Neal. Unmute.
Thank you. I unmuted. That the resolution passed by the Council of the Town of Fort Erie at its meeting of May 4th, 2020, to request the Prime Minister of Canada to continue limitation of cross-border traffic to essential traffic only. Restrictions remain in place until such time that it can be demonstrated that the flattening of the outbreak curve in the United States of America is on par with the progress we are seeing in Ontario. Request Canada Border Services Agency, in association with other health and law enforcement authorities, continues its protocol of screening and monitoring those individuals crossing the border to ensure that only essential travelers or individuals who reside in Canada gain entry into Canada as long as the border restrictions remain in place. And request special attention be paid to the outbreak statistics concerning border states in the eventual decision-making progress to return cross-border travel to pre-pandemic normalities be received and supported.
Speakers to that motion. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since then, has the government not already put in place that it would be extended till June 21st? And I believe discussion even today was maybe they may even look to August the 1st. So I think this motion, even though I do support the motion, was made prior to the federal government announcing that the borders would be closed till June 21st, which is now occurring.
That is correct, but the town of Fort Erie is still asking for support based on the fact that they want to make sure at the end of the time it doesn't reopen until they feel it's absolutely safe. In this case, you're right, that was extended today until I think it is June 21st. Any further speakers to that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion B, City of Thorold, mover Councillor Decker, seconder Councillor Neal, Niagara Parks Commission Development of Millers Creek Marina, and it's referred to Councillor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the resolution passed by the Council of the Town of Fort Erie at its meeting of May 4th, 2020, about the enhancement of the marina and resort development on adjacent lands at the NPC's Miller Creek Marina, including engaging the province in the discussions, be received and supported. Oops.
Okay. Any speakers to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion C, moved by Councillor Sentence, seconded by Councillor Hanley. Region of Niagara Government Relations Strategy, COVID-19. Councillor Sentence.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm having a little trouble with my internet right now. I don't have that in front of me. I apologize. I don't know. Could somebody else speak to it? Or
Yeah, I'll get our Deputy Clerk, Joanne Goulet, to speak, please.
Thank you.
That the resolution passed by the Council of the Region of Niagara at its meeting of April 23rd, 2020, requesting the 12 local area municipalities formally endorse motions that support the collaboration between all of Niagara's communities and the Niagara region be received and supported.
Speakers to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Motion D, City of Thorold, mover Councillor DeRose, seconder Councillor Longo, correspondence from Vance Badaway, MP Niagara Centre, referred to Councillor DeRose.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The resolution is that correspondence received from Vance Badaway, MP, concerning the following be received. That the correspondence received from Vance Badaway, Member of Parliament, Niagara Centre, regarding rebranding the gas tax fund, building communities partnership fund, federal municipal program, and supported. That the correspondence received from Vance Badaway, Member of Parliament, Niagara Centre, regarding Great Lakes, and supported. That the correspondence received from Vance Badaway, Member of Parliament, Niagara Centre, regarding skilled trades, and supported.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Any speakers to that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I have City of Thorold. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, seconder, Councillor Kenny. Graffiti downtown St. Catharines. Councillor Wilson.
The resolution passed by the City of St. Catharines Council at its meeting February 10th, 2020, pertaining to graffiti be received and supported.
Speakers to that motion. Councillor Hanley, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just in regards to bringing that up, I know that we had a motion forward and the city's looking into security cameras and where we may be with that, because we are looking at the Privacy Act and that stuff. If the deputy clerk could answer, or the clerk please, on that.
Yeah, I think there's a report coming to council next meeting, but I'll turn that over to our deputy clerk, Joanne. Go ahead.
So since the last report that I had brought forward, I can't remember when, I've been working with privacy professionals across the province to see what they're doing and try and get a feel for it. I'll have a report coming forward on June 2nd regarding the surveillance cameras. However, we need to ensure that we're in compliance with our privacy regulations. And a PIA does need to be undertaken, and it may cost the city some funds, but that'll be outlined in the next report in June.
June 2nd?
June 2nd, yeah.
Is that okay?
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, motion to receive and file minutes or adopt recommendations of council, committees, and boards. I got a mover, Councillor Longo, a second, Councillor Sentence, the minutes to review for information purposes, and minutes to endorse any recommendations. Go ahead, Councillor Longo. Yep.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. So just,
Nothing here.
you don't have to read anything. I've been
No.
informed by the clerk. It's just a motion to receive the minutes. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Statement by councillors. Up first, I have Councillor Neal, social distancing. Your mute button. There you go.
Since this is a topic that has been discussed regarding the COVID, I thought we should bring it forward because we are doing Front Street, and I want to make sure that the social distancing on the sidewalks are taken into consideration when we are putting the sidewalks down, and also taking a look at the rest of our community and where we could improve our sidewalks, or in the future, any future projects that we consider social distancing in the program.
Does anyone want to speak to that? Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like some clarity from Councillor Neal. Are you asking that we redesign what's been tendered out already for Front Street?
I don't think we need to redesign it. It only could maybe put more of concrete on both sides, and maybe we don't need to do anything of it. Maybe Sean could give us an update on maybe that wouldn't have to happen.
Okay, it sounds like a design change to me, but maybe somebody on staff could tell us how easy it would be.
Go ahead, I'll turn that over to our CAO, Manoj Dawaria. Sean here?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the sidewalks on Front Street are wide enough, but your comments is well taken, Councillor Neal, that we have to look at it, the social distancing and how the sidewalks will be reconstructed in the future. But my understanding, and I will forward it to Sean Dunsmore, he can elaborate on it. But my understanding is that the sidewalks are wide enough on Front Street that would permit social distancing on it. So I will, through Mr. Mayor, if you can forward to Sean Dunsmore. Thank you.
Sean is available to speak, so we'll get our manager engineering, Sean Dunsmore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the sidewalks on Front Street right now are about 10 feet wide from building phase to the straight part. And then we have the bump outs at the corners and a few other locations that are going to widen out to 15, 16 feet. So I believe any changes that are going to happen in sidewalks related to this COVID-19 are going to be in the 8-foot range for sidewalks. And our Front Street already is way beyond that. So I don't think there's any real design changes required for Front Street.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate that. And since we don't have to worry about Front Street, but maybe in the future, social distancing is going to be a priority. And when we're looking at sidewalks or other ways of keeping people apart by the 6-foot rule is what we should be looking at.
Councillor Neal, I have you up for DQ Heritage Park graffiti cameras.
Yes, just commenting as with that report a few minutes ago. DQ House Heritage Park, of course, is a national historic site, and it includes things about the Battle Beaver Dams and Lower Seacourt, and also the Indigenous. We have a monument there, peace monument regarding that. And I feel that we need to put cameras in there as well as other places, but in there. And I'm looking forward to the report and hope that there's a solution to that specific place in the report that will be coming forward.
That is be on June 2nd, Councillor. Okay.
Thank you.
And now I move on to Front Street reconstruction costs. Councillor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I directed a question at Director of Operations Jeff Holman at the last meeting, and then I got calls after that trying to explain what he explained to me, and I just couldn't do a good job. So I would like to ask if Manager of Engineering Sean Dunsmore could explain. We're just a little concerned, and of the people are concerned about the over 25% increase in costs in such a short period of time. And people just are asking, and I figure Sean would be able to explain it a lot better than I can. Thank you.
Okay, Sean, turn that over to you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in bidding the tender, our budget originally was based on a 60% design. Some of the things that weren't included were some of the finishes that are on Front Street. Front Street it's definitely got a lot of finishes on it. Things like the bike racks and the benches and the trees were all things that weren't properly estimated in the 60% design. The trees themselves, instead of costing $20,000 each, or $20,000 for the group, it cost $20,000 each. So our original budget was based on a 60% design from Associated Engineering, and some of these prices came in a little higher, and we had to deal with some issues that we weren't foreseeing, like the street light poles. They have to be refinished and repowder coated. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Dunsmore. Could you clarify that if I heard that right? The trees were going to cost $20,000 altogether, but now it's $20,000 each. Are we putting new trees in, or I don't understand how that's happening? If you could explain, please.
Go ahead, Sean.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah. The construction includes 32 trees to be placed in there. Those trees, because they're planted in the sidewalk, we need to be very careful about the root ball and how it gets watered so that the trees survive. And then the space around the tree that where the water gets in the root ball is also a grading system. It's a black steel grate, similar to what you would see in downtown St. Catharines. And that whole system together, including the tree, is about $20,000 per tree.
Holy moly. Is there not another option? Like, that just seems crazy to me. So it's $20,000 a tree, and we have 20 trees down there, and that's what we're spending our taxpayers' money on? I just have a difficult time. Like, there's got to be a better option or way, or maybe we have no trees. I think that sounds like not a great plan, but that's a lot of money for a tree. And what happens if it dies? Can we plant a new one there?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, I don't know what the other councillors feel about that, but that just seems insane to me.
Councillor Hanley. Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
In regards to the trees, how long before, and they planted those trees on Front Street before the root balls start expanding, and you cannot stop roots, they move everything. And how long before that $20,000 investment? To me personally, I kind of agree with Councillor annoying me, but the landscaping design and the investment we have in the trees and that stuff, and seeing what the trees had previously done to downtown Front Street and the infrastructure surrounding those trees, I personally don't think it's a good investment either. I think a different type of design, because no matter what type of tree, as we heard back when they done Front Street, then, oh, don't worry about it, those trees, they'll be cut and maintained, there'll be no problems. Yeah, we've seen what happened. So just to give an example, I agree with some of the design on Front Street, and not all of it. That's one of them I don't agree with. And I have a comment under other statements too.
Anyone else?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's part of the design of those root balls, is to control the roots and have them grow down instead of coming through the road into the road base and causing all that heaving and stuff. That's actually the reason for the extra money in the root ball itself.
Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Just in regard, not to debate it, but, and when they go down, then they get into the infrastructure that's down there. the sewers that are coming out of the businesses. As we know, we have frequent calls. We're probably out every week, guaranteed on it, in business. Maybe not in the downtown core, but with the trees and the roots. So to me, it's a future problem that's going to be occurring for the city. That's what I feel anyways, but it's all good.
Okay, I got Councillor Longo. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hanley, I don't agree it's all good. I think it's bad. I voted against this project not because I don't think we need it done, but I think it's an insult to our taxpayers to come in $1 million over budget after 2 months. 32 trees at $20,000 each is $640,000 at this time for trees downtown. That's ridiculous. I love a good tree as much as anybody else, but in my mind, that's ridiculous. And I still think this project is seriously flawed. I hope we don't come in with another request for an over budget. And there's got to be a better way to spend $640,000 downtown. And I have to make my voice known. It's tough times for people, and we're spending that kind of money downtown for 32 trees. I just can't agree with it.
My point was it's just going to go on anyways, Anthony.
Go ahead, Sean. Did you want to speak to that?
No, I don't have anything on that.
Councillor Sentence. Go ahead, Councillor Sentence. Councillor Sentence, go ahead. You got to unmute.
Got it.
There you
Sorry,
go.
I'm just having a lot of trouble here today. I apologize. I don't want to call out my carrier, but anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm for the project downtown and everything like that, and I know there's overruns, but through you, Mr. Mayor, Sean, is there something else? That number is pretty staggering. I don't know the business very well. I don't know if this is part of a separate landscaper coming in or anything. Is there any way to look into alternatives or pricing? Or again, not knowing this process, that was a big amount per tree.
Sean?
During the tendering process and the design process, we did look for cheaper options on that front. We don't believe there is one that's going to leave you with a successful tree and room for it to grow and succeed. I guess there's an option of taking half of them out if you would like.
We can revisit that. I got did you want anything else to say, Councillor Sentence?
Yeah, I just I would like to investigate the idea of something else. If it's not, even if it's not a tree, if it's something else. And I love trees too, and it would look good down there. It just price-wise, just look into something that an alternative or I guess the pricing is the pricing. I just it was a big amount that caught me off guard. Thank you.
I got Councillor Kenny and then Councillor Wilson. Go ahead, Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, that's all I had to hear from Matt, that we could eliminate half. I'm going to put a motion forward that we eliminate half the trees that are in that plan. I got a seconder.
Do we have a seconder? I got Councillor Decker. Anyone want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I make an amendment to that? A friendly amendment? If they could look at an alternative, because I think 600,000, thank you for doing the math, Councillor Longo. I was blindsided by the cost and couldn't remember how many trees he set down there. But to me, to spend $600,000 of taxpayer money is just not responsible. I'm trying to imagine other downtowns if there's trees there or not. And I'm not sure if that's a regular practice, but like Councillor Sentence said, if they can look for an alternative to a tree, otherwise reduce the amount of trees significantly would be. So I don't know if we could make that amendment, Councillor Kenny, if they could reduce the amount, if not look to
So you
remove them
wanna,
altogether.
so your amendment is to look, reduce the amount, but also look for alternatives for the other trees that are coming out, is my correct? Is that what you want?
Yes, well, I think first and foremost, look for an alternative to planting a tree, like maybe we do hanging plants or something like that, or bushes. Bushes might be less, aggressive than a tree, but and then reduce the amount or take the trees out altogether.
So you want to put that back to staff to investigate.
Is that okay, Councillor Kenny?
Councillor Kenny. Councillor Kenny.
Well, my motion was to reduce the trees, cut it in half. I really don't, it's pretty straightforward. I mean,
What's the easiest thing here is my recommendation, send it back to staff and let them bring 2 or 3 different things back to us so that you can look at them.
Well, I just don't want the project delayed.
No, but that's not something I don't think, but I'll let Sean speak. Will that cause any issues right now in the project, Sean?
I don't think so. I think we can make that decision, come back with a report to council and then be able to stay on schedule.
How's that sound?
As long as it's not going to affect the schedule, I can pull the motion and hear what the report says, and then we speak on it then.
You still need a motion for the report.
I'll make a motion for the report itself.
Okay, each gonna change. So the motion is gonna be for a staff report to bring back some different options and look at it, and then as soon as possible. Is that good with everyone? Is there anyone else that has an issue? I got Councillor DeRosa.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can one of the options they look at is just not having trees?
Sean, can you look at all options, okay?
Listening to hand about the roots, yeah. Just because I'm really concerned about the root issue. Whether they grow down or not, they're still gonna, I don't know if a tree is a good place there. And then you have to think of the maintenance also, the upkeep.
Let staff come back. They put a lot of work into why they went with that system, so let them bring back some different alternatives.
Thank you.
Okay, is that fine with everyone? So what do you, I'll ask our city clerk, are you fine with that? Yes. We don't need a motion for the staff report, or we? Okay, you have a mover, you have a seconder, Councillor Decker. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. That's the end of that one. Now I'm moving on to Councillor Hanley. Canada Summer Games, demographic change and post-COVID-19 construction challenges. Go ahead.
Okay, seeing that we're in the midst of building the Canada Games facility and some of the announcements that the government's made in regards to what future builds may look like, and because this is going beyond, this isn't, going to end in 1 year. Builds are going to be contingent on the fact that we may have another virus come down the road years from now. And they've stated that it's been commented that future builds and current facilities would have to be retrofitted, redesigned to accommodate effects of COVID-19, reconfigured, washrooms, public areas, washrooms, dressing rooms, entrances, showers. Management costs will escalate and operating costs will escalate. So is this going to be putting into context the agreement that I know hasn't come forward that will be coming forward? Because I believe that the current design build may become obsolete by the time it's finished, because my understanding, reading government reports and that stuff, is that we may be looking at Building Canada changing the way facilities are built here on in and into the future. That's what they're considering. This isn't no like gone in 6 months and forget about it. People are retrofitting buildings already, factories are, and it's going to continue to every business that's going to open until now and until the future. And I'm concerned that we may be building facility and then costs are going to escalate because of the ongoing, and we'll be responsible for managerial costs and expenditures that are going to rise because of running it. So I know we haven't got no report, but I think that that type of consideration has to be looked at, considering current and post-COVID. All you gotta do is read the paper. That's
Thank
my
you.
comment there.
Okay. You also have sidewalk petition on Sullivan.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that's been resolved. What that was is we had some markings out there where the PBS guys were out there doing the grounding, and some of the residents were concerned that there may be some sidewalks installed after their petition had been presented to the council. But I talked to Sean today, and that's all been resolved. There's a redesign going in, and citizens don't have to be fearful of that.
Okay, and downtown construction.
And downtown, we resolved that too. It's just that knowing that being a longtime resident and some of the things under there, and there was some infrastructure that's located under downtown, and I know that had been exposed, but I've been assured that it's not going to be an issue come down the road. It's some abandoned pipes that are there and are no longer connected. So they believe that it may be best to just keep them in place right now. So that's been resolved too.
Thank you, Councillor Hanlon. Okay, I've got, are we ready for delegations to report? Okay, so we have a delegation. I have Paul and Fran Doherty, residents on Honey Locust, regarding the Interim Director of Planning and Development Services report, PDS 2020-11. And I'll ask Paul and Fran to take the speaker. They're on from teleconference. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Ugolini, councillors, and city staff. I am Paul Doherty, the owner of 35 Honey Locust Circle in Thorold. I first would like to begin with an apology. I am sorry. At council meeting on February the 18th, 2020, I was asked the question if the curtains were shown on the drawings for the pool permit, and I responded, yes. At the time, I believed this to be true. Unfortunately, I was unaware the department had received the wrong drawing package when submitted. When pricing out my backyard, I created individual packages for pricing to different trades and the city. The city received the wrong package. It received the drawings for the pool package and not the permit package. Unfortunately, this did not include the drawings for the curtains and the post. I was unaware of this mistake until I read the agenda and saw the recommendation for tonight's meeting regarding this matter. I now realize that I should have delivered the package myself to ensure the correct package was delivered. I hope you will accept my explanation and that you will decide this case on its merits. Shortly after obtaining the pool permit, we shared my vision of the backyard with my adjoining neighbors. None of my neighbors expressed any concern with the design I proposed. My goal has always been to take our small yard and create a safe and private space for both my neighbors and my family to enjoy. I'm trying to provide privacy for my family and neighbors. I know that I cannot make 100% of the people completely happy, but I've always tried to consider people's happiness and work hard at doing so. Referring to the survey that went out to 25 of my surrounding neighbors, only 20% of the neighbors did not support the privacy panel. At the time of the final inspection, when everything was completed, the building inspector inspected the property and it passed. No infractions were noted. I think I understand why my yard passed final inspection. It is my belief that our building inspectors recognize the restrictions that we are working with. Shallow lots. If the variance is not a safety hazard and it works, it should not be challenged. I'm aware that the building inspector and bylaw officers see infractions that pertain to exterior spaces daily and choose not to file a report for compliance if it does not concern safety. This morning, the city clerk sent you pictures of what can be seen from my backyard. Our city inspectors have already been in some of these yards and passed their pools and stated no infractions. It is easy to see from these pictures that every one of these neighbors has their own challenges. You can see that they do not comply to certain setbacks. In building these accessory structures, they cannot comply with setbacks. Shallow lots pose challenges to those of us wanting to create usable outdoor space. Introducing a pool to a yard of this size makes it even more of a challenge to comply with certain setbacks without losing something. In my case, privacy. More pools are going in and more people are using their yards as outdoor living spaces, especially today. I feel that this bylaw for privacy screens do not take into consideration the size or depth of most lots and sight lines in our subdivisions. This current bylaw under discussion may work in subdivisions containing large lots, but is not a one-size-fits-all with our shallow lots. It is for you to decide whether, in the future, an amendment to the bylaw is warranted to address the problem confronting many of us with smaller lots. For today, though, the only solution for me is an exemption. So I ask Council to please help me. I have invested considerable effort and money to create privacy for myself and my neighbors. All that expenditure and my privacy and that of my neighbors will be destroyed if you will not grant me an exemption. Please help me find an acceptable solution to this problem. I cannot move the post for the curtains to accommodate a 4-foot setback. That would put my post in my pool. The only way to comply would be completely remove the privacy screen. That would have a permanent negative effect on all my neighbors. However, the curtain is at 10 feet. This is 2 inches above the bylaw and can be lowered to comply to the 9'10" height restriction. The exemption will then be limited to a setback. In conclusion, I want to remind you that I went to my neighbors and not one expressed any concern about the design I proposed. My backyard did pass final inspection. That 80% of those neighbors surveyed did not express any concern with the suggested exemption. And finally, that there are many households in this neighborhood that are not in compliance with bylaws. Exemptions are permitted regularly. I ask you to please be fair in your decision and let us keep our seasonal curtain that provides us and our neighbors privacy during the pool season. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Paul. Do I have any questions from the councillors? Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask you, who filled out the application?
I filled out the application.
Okay, and who submitted the application?
My wife did.
And you give her that application?
No, I didn't.
So if you filled out the application, then you must have known. You stated that.
No.
Well, you stated that. Excuse me. I don't mean to make it, but you had the time. You stated that you had put in the application. You wish that you had done it yourself, because then you would have noticed that you made an error on the application in regards to curtains, because you thought that was on the drawing. But you just answered the question when I asked you who filled out the application. You stated it was you. So filling out the application, you should have known then what it was that you had because you just submitted, you filled out the application. So to me, that's not an excuse. Your wife handing it in, that's something you wish you would have done it yourself because that. And were you aware of the 4-foot setback when you filed your application?
So the question, Paul, is were you aware of the setback when you made the application?
Can I answer the first question that Mr. Hanley proposed? Okay. So Mr. Hanley, you asked the question, did I fill out for the permit? Okay, the application.
Yes, I asked that question.
So the application is a number of parts. There's the forms where you fill out.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
And then there's the drawing aspect.
I know what there is. I know what there is.
So
yeah.
let me finish.
You don't have to explain it to me. I've been a councillor for 20 years. I know how the application.
No, I'm trying to explain to you what happened here.
You had your time, sir. I don't mean to be ignorant, Mr. Mayor.
No, but listen, he's answering your first question, then he'll go on and answer the second question. Let's just...
So when I said I had packages put together, okay, I had an electrical package, I had a landscaping package, I had a pool package, and I had a permit package. They were all laid out. When I left for work on the Sunday night, because I couldn't redo it myself, I asked my wife to pick up the permit package and deliver it. My wife picked up the pool package and brought it in with the drawings for the pool, not the drawings for the permit.
Okay,
there's two
I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you.
Through the chair. So that is the answer to that question. The second question was, what was your second question, Councillor Hanley?
Well, I asked him who submitted the application. He said that it was his wife who submitted it. And then that was my question because he had stated just what he had stated, that he said he would have brought the application in, but he's the one that actually filled the application out. And I'm sorry, but ignorance doesn't work to me.
Okay, so that has the answer to that question. Is there any further question?
Yes, to Jason Simpson, if I could, please.
Go ahead, Jason.
I know the gentleman had noted that there was no infractions that were noted on approval for the pool. Jason, did the pool in fact have the curtain installation as part of the building permit, or was the approval just for the fact of the pool permit itself?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanley. The permit application that was submitted and approved by the municipality did not include the privacy screen in question today. That privacy screen was not indicated at all on the submitted plans and therefore was not a part of the approval process at all.
When did the city make notification that the screening that he had in place needed to have an amendment brought forward or a zoning bylaw amendment to the city? Why did that come about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the city by enforcement division received a complaint from the public identifying that there was the structure being built in the rear yard and they had concerns over the height of the structure. That initiated an investigation by the bylaw enforcement division, at which point it became aware to us.
Thank you. And are you in favor or against this amendment?
Well, my recommendation in the report.
Well, the report. This is just questions to the presenter. The report is the report, and that comes further on in the.
Okay, sorry then. Okay, well, I got more questions from Mr. Simpson when it comes forward, and I got no more presentations for the presenter.
Is there any other questions for the presenter? Go ahead, Councillor Sentence, to the presenter.
Yeah. Hi, Paul and Fran. A couple of questions for you. When you said you went to your neighbors and you asked them for not approval, but if they minded what you were going to put up, when it was going up, did you bring them in to look at it and say, do you mind this? Or do you conceptually say we're going to put a curtain up and it's going to go around here for you for privacy? And were they aware of the size of it?
So the conversations were ongoing with our neighbors because they were interested in what was happening in the backyard. So as the process was happening, they were watching, and I was explaining the process throughout.
Okay, thank you. So when we did the survey, and it was a percentage of people, some applied, some didn't, some replied, some didn't reply, and you bring up the 80-20%. Well, the point I'm trying to make here is, and I talked to your wife about this before too, is that it's not, to me, the percentage isn't 84-20 against, let it go. And I'm not saying anything here though. The percentage was that you have people around you that really don't like it from their side. And I've seen your pictures. It's beautiful from the inside. Everything's the same. The people on the outside, and I've had calls, the people from the outside and around really don't like it. And I'm not trying to say it's ugly or anything like that. It looks good from the inside. I'm just trying to be honest with you as to your perception of how you see it and to how it's seen from the outside.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Councillor Sentence. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Paul Doherty. So I'm just confused. I'm on this committee. It was Councillor Sentence and I that first heard this come to council. And I do have my previous notes in front of me where you stated at that hearing that you were aware of the bylaw regarding the setback. And you said at that time that you didn't ask for a permit from the city. But now this evening you're saying you had it drawn out, but you forgot to, or your wife did not mail that portion. So I guess I'm just concerned or confused by that, how that came to light or memory, and then why that story is changing. Could you comment on that?
So I'm aware that if you sent in the drawings with the, like in this situation, had the drawings been, the correct drawings been sent in that showed the curtains and the post and accepted, that is an exemption to the bylaws, okay? I knew that. I knew I wasn't required to have a building permit, but I knew I had to set the setbacks, hit the setbacks for it. So I needed an exemption. And the only way to get that exemption was by providing those on the drawing. That's why I had so many different drawings, because the pool guys didn't need to know that I had curtains going up, but I knew that the city needed to know about the post and the curtains. So I could hit those setbacks or get a revision or an exemption on that setback. So it wasn't until yesterday or 2 days ago when I read the report that I actually had to understand what happened here. Because my wife had picked up the wrong drawing off my desk to make copies to bring into the city with the written portion of the permit. So there was two portions of the permit. There was a written portion and there was a drawing portion. It was the drawing portion itself that was incorrect, that was picked up off the desk.
Okay, thanks for the answer to that. I have a hard time with the meshing of those two stories, but that's all my questions.
Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, I'd like to thank Paul and Fran Doherty for your, oh, sorry, Councillor Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, just on the process, we have 8 councillors, and I don't know if technicality, okay, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that all councillors were here and we haven't lost somebody because of technical problems, but Councillor Hanley's back, sorry.
Okay. I want to thank Paul and Fran Doherty for your presentation. And can I get a motion to bring that report forward? Councillor Wilson, seconder. Councillor Sentence. And we'll move right to that report. PDS 2020. It's under discussion reports -11. And I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Wilson. 35 Honey Locust privacy screen. And then I'll turn that over to our Chief Building Official, Jason Simpson. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Recommendations of this report are: one, that council support the recommendations of the Public Forum Committee dated February 4th, 2020, and two, that council support the provisions of the City of Thorold's fence bylaw number 28-2008 and require the privacy screen constructed at 35 Honey Locust Circle to be brought into compliance with such provisions. And that concludes the recommendations. Thank you.
And now I have speakers. I got Councillor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to defer that report to speak to staff regarding the new report that was sent through today, specifically the inspection report dated July 12th, 2019?
Yes.
I have some questions that I'd like to speak to Jason about, but not at this moment, perhaps.
So you want to defer the report? You haven't spoken to the report, and I need a seconder. And there's no debate of a deferral motion. I have Councillor Neal as seconder. Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Are you following that to the city clerk? All those in favor, I need a hands up. Opposed? What
Is
did
there a vote,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor?
DeRose, did you vote? Hi? Are you
Do you
for or
see Councillor
against?
Wilson?
No, Councillor DeRose.
I'm against.
I got your hand.
Mayor, can we do that again, please?
Okay, all those in favor of the deferral? Councillor Decker wants to defer because she wants to talk to get more information from Chief Building Official. So all those in favor of deferral, put your hands up, please, so Donna can see them. 5. Opposed? 3. Okay, so that's deferred. Hopefully that can get done and back to the next meeting on June 2nd. Councillor Decker, you'll deal with...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we're moving on to consent reports. I have mover Councillor Decker, seconder Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody that wants to pull a consent report, or are we taking them all together? Councillor DeRose, go ahead. Did you want to speak to a consent report?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was referring to discussion reports, not any consent reports. I'm good,
Okay,
thank you.
anybody on any consent reports? So we're going to move them all. I got a mover, Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're going to discussion reports. Up first is DF 2020-12. I have a mover, Councillor Neal, a seconder, Councillor Wilson, and I'll turn this over to our Director of Finance. It's tax due dates 2020, Maria Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations are that the final normal installment dates for the residential, farmland, managed forests, and pipeline classes be delayed by 1 month each to July 31st and September 30th. Secondly, that the normal final first installment date for commercial, industrial, and multi-residential classes of June 28th be delayed to July 31st, pending finalization of the Bill 140 calculations from OPTA, and the second due date to September 30th. Thirdly, that a bylaw be prepared and presented to council for approval. And lastly, that an advertisement be placed in Niagara this week and on the city's website advising of the tax installment due dates. And this concludes the report.
Thank you, Maria. Is there any speakers to this report? And I don't see any. I'm just going to comment that's pretty consistent with what's happening in other municipalities. Am I correct, Maria?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Just so everybody's aware of that. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. DF 2020-13, I got a mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor DeRose. COVID update report number 2, and again, I'll turn this over to our Director of Finance, Maria Morrow. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations that the report be received for information purposes, that council requests that the federal and provincial governments provide municipalities with the 2020 grant to assist with funding current operations, maintaining appropriate service levels, and funding post-pandemic operating and capital costs for the COVID-19 event. Thirdly, that council requests that the federal and provincial governments establish a new infrastructure building program by increasing the amount of gas tax funding and or other capital funding programs to be made available to municipalities to stimulate the economy later this year. That council requests the federal and provincial governments to accelerate the approval of ISIP project applications submitted by the city to contribute to the economic recovery after the COVID-19 event is over. Fifth, that staff prepare further report outlining a pandemic recovery plan and related costs. And lastly, that regular update reports be provided to council as required. And this concludes the report.
Thank you, Maria. Questions for Maria? Go ahead, Councillor Sentence, then Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks, Maria, for the report. I like that we're looking ahead and looking past the pandemic and what they're going to do for us. And I was just reading some of the motions that were coming from other centers about, getting the 75% paid for our employees, and they're pushing for that too. I would really like to see that come to fruition, because employees are employees regardless of where they are. So thank you for the report, and I'd just like to put that in there.
Thank you. I got Councillor Hanley. You had your hand up, and then I have Councillor DeRose.
Yes, I just wanted to look at the report. I did have something here, I'm wanting to read about, in regards to where we're going to be going, and you fast forward today, and the legislation that's governing municipalities ensures that municipalities cannot borrow more than a portion of their anticipated taxes in any year. And I know we're good on that end, and that their operating budgets will be balanced. We have to make sure that, and COVID-19 is going to call for extraordinary measures, but they state in here that we shouldn't be looking at this here cash flow coming from the federal and the provincial government as a means as to sustain what may be coming down the road. This is going to be a short-term, I believe, loan to the municipalities. It's not going to be a grant. It's going to be like a bank giving you a deferral on your mortgage, I believe. And that and cash flow relief will not address the unforeseen expenditures that this municipality is going to have. And, LAPAT, the Land Planning Approval Tribunal, in regards to the municipal budget and operating at a deficit, if that's the case, they actually have to hear it, because we're not allowed to, or any municipalities by that case, to run a deficit. So it's going to be interesting to see how our cash flow goes. And one of the interesting things is that most municipalities rely on tax revenues that are generated from what they classify as real property. And what are we going to do in the city if all the students down there at Brock University start doing their courses online, and we got 2,000 houses empty in the city of Thorold, and the landlords aren't paying their taxes because they got no tenants? So there's a big road ahead of us. This is no short-term thing, but I'm glad to see we're looking at it, and I'm wanting to see what report's going to come forward is what we're going to do in the future, the city of Thorold, in regards to finances and moving ahead. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Hanley, and those are good points. And I can tell you that our staff is going to be constantly updating and bringing reports to council, as well at the regional level. We're going to make a push with all the municipalities in the region so that we have a stronger voice to make sure that we get our share of funding from upper levels of government. Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'm just through the report. I thought it was well written. Now they have following guiding principles, which to me is another expression for mission statement. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as councillors, as the mayor, as the CEO, staff. I'm just going to read 3 of these quickly. And in order to maintain business continuity, we have the following guiding principles. I think we all have to be on the same page. The first one is to ensure the city remains able to provide services to the community for the duration of the crisis. The third one, to ensure the corporation remains fiscally responsible and in a financially stable condition during this pandemic and beyond. And the last one, to consider the impacts not only to 2020, but also the future budgets, as Councillor Hanley is stating, that this isn't business as usual going forward. So we have to adapt, and I just want to make sure that our decision-making might be a little different at this point. I like how that guiding principles to me is another words for a mission statement, and we should follow it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Do I have anyone else? Okay, and I just want to say to Maria and all senior staff, I want to thank you for I know the hours that go into putting all these reports together. They're not just put together in 2 minutes, and they work every day. Every day they meet, and not only as a senior staff group, but we meet as a EOC group, and the amount of work our staff's doing is outstanding, and I'm happy that council tonight realizes and appreciates the work our staff does. So I just want to reiterate on that. So all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We've already done the privacy screen. It's deferred. And now we're on to PDS 2020-15. I have mover Councillor Kenny, seconder Councillor Longo, circulation of Niagara this week. And again, I turn that one over to Jason Simpson, our chief building official. It's under you, so you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Recommendations of this report are that council receive the report for information purposes, and that council direct staff to provide contact information for Niagara this week on the City of Thorold website for the convenience of residents. And that concludes the recommendations.
Okay, and any speakers to this? I have Councillor Wilson, and then I have Councillor DeRose. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was happy to see this report come back. I guess my question is that for you, Mr. Mayor, because it said that you met with them, and that the part that I was surprised about was that they said they can't find a letter carrier for this area. So in other municipalities, are they not delivering the paper in this manner?
It's hit and I'll let you, do you want to address that, Jason? I know it's hit and miss. Some areas they are, and some areas they aren't. And in our area, they're doing it by courier. Did you want to speak at all on that, Jason?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yes, when we had our meeting with the representatives from Niagara this week, they did identify that in a number of the municipalities, they are able to provide carrier delivery, but they've been having some difficult times finding someone to provide that service for them or to apply for their carrier position within the City of Thorold. So it is still an ongoing search that they're conducting, but they have not had any takers at this moment or up to this point.
Any further question on that, Councillor Wilson? Okay,
No, thank you,
I got
Mr.
Councillor DeRose and then Councillor Decker. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just reading through Jason's report. Thank you, Jason. I'm really surprised, as Councillor Wilson said, they can't find a carrier in Thorold. Like, are they really trying hard? Because I know it probably will be a huge cost to them to have someone walking instead of driving. But the thing is, Mayor, you met with them on March 2nd, and I'm still getting calls up until this past week that they're calling and they're not adhering to their wishes. So I know, Jason, you said you have a number too. So maybe if we can put that number out there, because the numbers that we had before weren't working. But my other concern is just how long are we going to look at this for? Because I know you ended by saying, should the matter continue, then council may consider adopting a bylaw preventing bag and toss delivery methods. And if you ask me, I think that's where we're headed. And I've spoken before about this because I think it's a safety issue, having someone distracted driving, throwing newspapers. And I think it makes our city look horrible as far as the litter. And I think there's no advantages to us to not maybe give them a timeline and then let's do it, because I'm still getting calls, even though you've met with them 2 months ago now. Thank you.
I can tell you that it's better, but it's far from perfect. That's for sure, Councillor Thorold. Okay, go ahead. I've got Jason, and then I'll hit Councillor Decker after Jason speaks on this. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to Councillor DeRosa's points, I do agree it is an issue continuing. I don't believe we to date have provided Niagara This Week's information on our website. That is a recommendation of this report moving forward, should council agree to those recommendations. And the contact information that we are recommending to provide to the residents is direct to the Niagara Circulation Office, whereas apparently the information or the contact information that many residents receive from the paper, I believe, goes to an office in Hamilton and then needs to be redirected to Niagara. And there may be some communication loss through that process.
Thank you, Jason. I have Councillor Decker. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, great report, and I like the idea about putting the phone number on the website. I guess my question is this a possibility, instead of delivering the paper, can it be put in a grocery store or maybe the drugstore, and if people want the paper, then they can pick it up themselves? I know that SNAP used to do that, and you know, some of the other papers did that. Is that like an option we could look into, instead of having delivery, that if people want the paper, then they can pick it up themselves? I'm just wondering if that's something, you know, if this doesn't work out and people really want the paper, that we put it out there that way.
Okay, Jason, you want to answer that? Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe the municipality can direct the company how to conduct their business, but the municipality can, if they should they choose to pass bylaws prohibiting certain types of practice to occur, such as the bag and toss, or I forget exactly what the phrase was that they used, but as to how to conduct the business and tell them that can only be provided in certain locations, I don't believe the municipality has the authority to do such.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. PDS 2020-26. Council request to investigate requirement for builders to include rear yard fences in new subdivision builds. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, a seconder, Councillor Wilson, and I'll turn this over to our Chief Building Official, Jason Simpson. Hey?
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Denise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations, no problem. The recommendations of the report are that council maintain the current approach that fencing of rear yards of individual properties in new subdivision builds is optional and at the discretion of the property owner. This concludes the report.
Okay, and I'm going to go with Councillor Wilson. The questions for our Manager of Planning, Denise Landry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm having more comments rather than questions. So in reading this, I saw a couple things about comments about enforcement afterwards. So what the original thought or the request of staff was regarding this was to make sure that to basically reduce the parties that are happening in these new subdivisions. So when you have houses, you know, like big long rows, either it's townhouses or semis or whatever the case is, and they all have these adjoining backyards, it's essentially like a football field, where one house is a rental, maybe two houses down is another rental, and then what's happening is these massive parties are occurring in the backyard. So the idea, which actually came from one of our residents who's no longer a resident because he sold his home and moved to another city because what's happening in that section of Confederation, was that if we could require people to put up fences. Now, I understand that that's difficult to do if the house is already built, so the easiest way to do it is to require new builds to have it. And so in that report, it talked about, enforcing the fences after it's sold. Well, I don't think that would really be an issue because it'd be the same as the screening process that we just saw, right? The screen, and if there's a fence that's built, I highly doubt that somebody's going to tear it down because they don't want to have a fence. In terms of cost to a builder, it's going to be cheaper to build a whole bunch of fences versus one homeowner seeking out and finding someone to build and getting their neighbor's approval and consent and all that sort of stuff is a bit challenging. So, and the other comment was that, the legal aspect that they could appeal, the builders could appeal this. Well, they can appeal everything about their subdivision agreement. So I don't see that as a negative. So what my suggestion is, or if I could put a motion forward, would be that we create a focus group along with our staff members, some local builders. Like I know we've got some that live locally, like Glenn Gordon, Eddie Pizzo, the Bassianos from Mountain View Homes. We could get them together, maybe some other groups. Like I know in this report, it talked about Niagara Falls and Grimsby having these fencing law or rules in place where townhouses meet semis. Like I don't want to just say, oh, it's too difficult and throw it out. We have to do something. I mean, nobody's at the university right now, but they'll be back to school and we'll have these parties. And this is an opportunity for us to easily make sure that's segregated and we don't end up with these huge monstrosities in the backyard. So that's my recommendation. If we have a focus group that can get together, get some feedback from local builders, what their opinion is and how they see that working. Because I think most people want a fence. If they have a dog, they need a fence. If they have kids, they want to build a pool, they need a fence. So I don't see this as a downfall. And I hope that council will support this because our community needs to do something. We can't just keep throwing our hands up in the air and saying, this could be a problem, that could be a problem. We have students here, there are residents, but let's make sure we contain and, just like we would with our children, right? Reduce the risk to our community. I think we have to do something here. So I hope for all of your support in that.
Did you want to comment on that, Denise?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson's comments, there are different opportunities for preventing what's been happening in the rear yards. I would suggest that going the fence route, requiring that the developers or builders put the fence in, could cause a number of concerns. The homeowners may not like what fence is being built. We would have to establish parameters and guidelines for exactly how the fences would look. And the new home builders that are coming in at that point may not like what's been in the subdivision agreement in terms of what the fence is. Also, by including the fence, it would actually increase the cost for the homeowner, and that would be put on top of their mortgage. If they could defer the cost of the fence and put the fence in themselves once they've settled into their home, then they would have the opportunity to choose what type of fence would go up and also how to finance it. I do hear your comments, and I do like the suggestion, though, of meeting with the development community and having that conversation. I think that would be an important step to see what their thoughts are.
So Councillor Wilson's asking to have a focus group or round table and get everybody to put their heads together and come up with some sort of solution. Am I right, Councillor Wilson? I think that's something that's very doable.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor, because I think we have some great developers in our community that also live here and share our concerns about what's going on. So why not get their feedback? So we have a motion
from Councillor Wilson that we set up you want to call it a focus group or round table?
Sure. And then come back with a recommendation on what we can do?
Yeah. Okay. So we've got that taken down. So now, does anyone want to speak to this recommendation that's on the floor right now from Councillor Wilson? I have Councillor Sentence.
I fully support it. I was talking, I know there's difficulties in deciding it, but I would much rather have a fence in my yard for privacy, for students, all that stuff, and have it in my mortgage, rather than have it, have to build a $5,000 fence after. I know there's different styles and different techniques, but I like this focus group idea where maybe we can get some input and say, this is what we expect. So if it's in your mortgage, it's not hitting I don't want any more money onto the houses, but if it gives you that privacy in your mortgage instead of a $5,000 or more bang after, then I would like to explore it. So I support the motion.
Is there anyone else to speak to that? I got Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At first, when I read the report, I was in agreement with Denise, but now listening to Victoria and not living there, I don't experience it, but a lot of my friends and family do, and councillors do. So I think Councillor Wilson brought forth a great idea.
Okay.
I support her.
So you support it. Councillor Kenny, is your hand up to talk? No? Anyone else? So we're going to vote on that amendment first, or? Okay. So we have Councillor Wilson's amendment, which is that we set up a focus group, meet with the local builders and developers, and put our heads together and come up with some solutions regarding this. Any further speakers on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So do we have to... yeah. Okay, so we're good? Okay. I like that idea. We voted on it, but especially for townhouses, because some municipalities have really found a problem in that area. Okay, so we're going to move on to PDS 2020-28. I have a mover, Councillor Kenny, and a second, Councillor Neal. Temporary waiver of fees in municipal parking lots, and I'll turn this over to Jason Simpson, our Chief Building Official. I let you off the hook in the other one, but you're back on now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the recommendation of this report is that council support a waiver of all parking-related usage fees and time limit parking enforcement within municipally owned parking lots up to and inclusive of August 31st of 2020. And that concludes the recommendations of this report.
Speakers to the report. I have Councillor DeRose and then Councillor Longo. Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Jason. Jason, I had a couple calls from some medical staff downtown. If they have prepaid, are they still because there's no, do they get their money back, or is there any way to, or no? Is it done if they've already prepaid for the parking?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, that is something what we will need to speak to our service contractor who provides the services for us, and find out how we can satisfy our residents and see if we can provide any sort of refunds or future rebates of some sort.
Yeah, refund or credit, so that when it comes back on, they have something to look at. That's a good point.
It would require further discussions with them.
Thank you. Councillor Longo, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Finance, I guess, since this is a budgetary question, and it's $12,500. How do we account for this?
Through Mr. Mayor, this would be another item that, similar to the financial report and the impacts that we considered earlier this evening, this would be tacked on to those costs.
Okay, thank you.
I have Councillor Kenny. Go ahead.
Further to what Councillor DeRose said, I'm going to support this, but I would also say that we should definitely give either a rebate or a credit to anybody that has paid. We can't come back with an answer that they've paid, and that's too bad. Like, if somebody has paid, we owe it back to them one way or another.
Okay, Councillor Kenny, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the purpose of this. I guess what I don't see, though, is our ability to manage parking there. Then, if we have people taking advantage of it, and filling up parking spaces, not because they're visiting our local businesses, this is what I see the point of this being, right? So that there's no restraint for them to go downtown and spend some money. But then we have people living there that park and have friends that park and are taking up all of those spots. I guess that's where I struggle with this. I know we want to reduce costs for people, but if we do this, then we're not able to enforce parking so that people that are going to the businesses actually can get there and park nearby. So that's my concern. I don't know if you can comment on that, Jason.
There's two things here that the one thing is the students aren't there over the summer, and that's why it's till August 30th, so they're not an issue. And secondly is that when we free up spaces, especially south of the fire hall, we allow people to shop downtown and with that excess parking in that lot to easily utilize the stores downtown without having to, especially during the construction when they can't park on Front Street.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that too. Okay.
Do you want to add to that, Jason?
Certainly, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe that the amount of parking spaces that we have downtown or within the vicinity of our municipally owned lots is an issue. We do have quite a number of parking spaces available throughout all the lots available down there. So I don't think a quantity will be an issue. If we find that it is becoming an issue and the parking lots are jammed full, we can certainly bring it back to council at that time, but I don't foresee that being a problem.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CC 2020-25. Mover, Councillor Wilson. Seconder, Councillor Hanley. Council board and committee meetings and public open houses, information centers. I'll turn this over to our clerk, Donna Delvecchio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is number one, that should there be a need by any committee, council committee or board to meet, they be permitted to do so via virtual means and in consultation with their staff representative, and that public open houses and statutory public meetings continue to be held if the need arises, using a variety of engagement methods noted in the report.
Questions? Questions on this report? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk. As you're all aware, we've been given the powers of the Committee of Adjustment, and I'm just wondering how this report will affect the Committee of Adjustment going forward, and if we will be relieved of those duties.
Go ahead.
Through the mayor, there is a report for June 2nd rescinding the delegation from council to go back to the Committee of Adjustment. Council won't receive any future Committee of Adjustment applications to consider. It'll be back to them, and there will be a meeting in mid-June.
Okay, so that report's coming at our next council meeting, Councillor Longo, on June 2nd. Okay? Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's the end of those. Notices of motion. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our next meeting, I'd like to bring a bylaw forward preventing bag and toss delivery methods in the city of Thorold due to safety concerns, health concerns, and property damage. Thank you.
Okay. You work with the clerk on that?
Yep, sure.
And the chief building official. Okay. There's no closed meetings. Bylaws. I have a mover is Councillor Sentence, seconder is Councillor Longo, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Bylaw 60-2020, 61-2020, 62-2020, 63-2020, 64-2020, 65-2020, 66-2020, 67-2020, 68-2020, and 70-2020, and that now be read the first time. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Final reading of the bylaws. Mover, Councillor Senton, seconder, Councillor Longo, that the bylaws just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same. Any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adjournment. I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, seconder, Councillor Hanley. All those in favor at 8 p.m. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I want to thank everybody for another great Zoom meeting, and we'll see us tomorrow because we have a special in-camera meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
I may be late. I may not be there. I get home right about then, so we'll try to make it.
Well, we're starting at 6, so chime in as soon as you can, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Be safe.